All right, thank you. It's a joy to be on this panel with you. Preventing euthanasia and encouraging hope is what I am most passionate about right now. And I think it was probably an early sensitivity to death that led me to this focus. My brother Brandon was born very premature. He only lived for 7 months, and I was only 2 years old when he died. And growing up, my parents really wanted to be sure that we would remember him in our family. So each year, we had cupcakes on the anniversary of his birthday on Earth and his birthday into heaven. And getting to watch home video of his baptism, his funeral, and even a day in the life at the hospital showed me concretely all these lives that he had touched. And so from a young age and from Brandon, I learned that his life had meaning, as each of our lives do, not only because of what we're able to accomplish in them, but because of what God is able to do in and through us as well. Another key influence in my life, personally, has been that of my grandfather. He was a Polish Jew, and he came to Canada in 1937, thankfully, and during my young adult years, he lived with my family from the time he was 89 until he died at age 96. I think that Pope Francis captured so well the value of having my grandfather in my life when he said, "We, the elderly, can remind young, ambitious people that a life without love is arid. We can say to young people who are afraid that anxiety about the future can be beaten. We can teach young people to in love with themselves that there is more joy in giving than in receiving. The words of grandparents have something special for grandchildren, and they know it." After my grandfather died, I moved to Poland and began studying there. And while I was there, my country of Canada legalized euthanasia nationwide in 2016. Legalized for those whose death was deemed reasonably foreseeable. So people who looked like my grandfather had in all of those years that he lived with us. When I was in Poland, a lot of people asked me, "What are you going to do with a degree in John Paul II studies?" And I usually answered, "Hopefully, I will humanize the culture." When I returned to Canada, I began working with a pro-life Christian member of parliament, and in that time, the Liberal government began trying to expand euthanasia on the basis of disability and mental illness. We put out a call for stories asking people how this legislation would affect them and their loved ones personally. And our parliamentary office started to feel like a crisis office as hundreds of stories poured in, begging us and imploring us not to allow this expansion to those who are most vulnerable in their lives. Well, now Canada has become the euthanasia capital of the world. Since legalization, more than 30,000 people have been killed by doctors and nurses in our hospitals. But to take a personalist approach and riff off of a quotation by a Holocaust survivor, it's not that 30,000 Canadians have been killed, but that one Canadian was killed 30,000 times over. The number one reason that Canadians are giving when Canadians expressly cite a reason for requesting euthanasia is a loss of the ability to participate in the activities that make life meaningful. That is the most cited reason for those who actually are actively requesting euthanasia. But there are many reasons for the requests, and there is also extensive testimony to date of those who are elderly, living with disabilities, are veterans suffering PTSD, and others experiencing poverty and homelessness, all of whom have already been facing coercive pressure to be euthanized. Now, this concerns all of us because those at the moment of greatest need and of greatest vulnerability are expecting something from us When my friends and fellow citizens are speaking about being abandoned, I hear Jesus' voice almost with a quiver in it when he asked his friends, "Do you also wish to go away?" It's as though we are being asked, "Are you going to leave me when I reveal myself to you? Or if you really knew me, might you betray me?" So what is it to have compassion for Jesus when he asks his friends if they're going to leave? Consider for a moment his question not coming from a sovereign posture of confidence, but from our incarnate God's willingness to subject his own human relationships and human respect to the precariousness to which our relationships and respect are also subject. Human acceptance is fragile, and even Jesus let himself feel that. Now, a Canadian woman with disabilities got very sick and could no longer work, and she testified before our Senate about what happened after she was abandoned by her partner. I'm going to read some excerpt from her Senate testimony in which she said, "And now he was leaving, and I was homeless. It was at that moment, while I was sobbing, that the hospital sent someone in to console me. They had heard the news, and she was very sorry. She patted me and passed me a tissue and said I'd been through so much and deserved a rest. Then she produced a DNR. When I refused, we went back and forth until the charade of concern was dropped, and she shouted, 'I don't even understand why you would want to go on living.'" The agony in the hospital, the agony in the garden. At the height of his agony, Jesus finds the people on whom he should be able to reasonably expect to trust sleeping. Not just once, but 3 times. So maybe they had disciple burnout or something. So Jesus gets fatigued by their abandonment, as understandably many of the people in our lives who we love do too when they feel that we have given up on them, maybe even again and again. Now, this past weekend, I had the wonderful experience of facilitating a bioethics symposium in Canada, and one of our faculty members who has bipolar shared with us that what she most needed to hear in the darkest period was for someone to say to her, "Thank you for staying alive, because I see it's really hard for you." Another faculty member who's been a psychiatrist for the past 20 years said that he has talked to thousands of people over the years, and that what got them through was the factor of having at least one person in their life who said to them, maybe with more than words, but maybe also with words, "I am never going away." Well, God knew that we all needed to hear that. So Christ says, "And remember, I am with you always till the end of the age." So my encouragement to all of you is to find the person in your life who most needs to hear it from you, that you are glad that they are here.